Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of www.stressfreenow.info. Our featured guest today is Dr. Anna Ranieri, speaking about connecting the dots, telling the story that will advance your career. Anna Ranieri is an executive coach, career counselor, and an accomplished speaker. As a Yale literature major who got an MBA and worked in corporate settings, Anna became interested in how people work together in organizations. She later retrained herself and has enjoyed her work as a psychotherapist, career counselor, and executive coach. Recently, she's taken to writing, co-authoring the book, How Can I Help? What You Can and Can't Do to Counsel a Friend, Colleague, or Family Member with a Problem, and writing articles on work and management for the Harvard Business Review, as well as making contributions to journalists' pieces and personal and professional development to share with their readers. Anna's next project is to co-author a book called Connecting the Dots, Telling the Story That Will Advance Your Career. Welcome, audience. Anna, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Yes, Anna, great. We're so happy to have you back on our show. You know, Anna, last time you hit the ball out of the park, or should I say you made the three-pointer since you're a Warriors fan. I don't know. You know, not everybody loves the Warriors the way you do because you're on the West Coast, so that's part of it. But certainly they have the type of season where that relates to connecting the dots. So could you tell our audience about your book, Connecting the Dots? Where did this idea arise and how you use it in your counseling and coaching work?
Well, yes, thank you. My co-author and I, Joe Burkhoff, have had experience with a prior book, How Can I Help? What You Can and Can't Do to Counsel a Friend, Colleague, or Family Member with a Problem. We're now working on a book which we want to call Connecting the Dots, Telling the Story That Will Advance Your Career. This is something I teach classes on, I have written about in Harvard Business Review, and it's a topic that's of great interest to me, first because it's personal. In my own life and my career, I've had very different paths that I've taken, and I see that happening with my clients, whether they're career counseling clients, psychotherapy clients, or executive coaching clients. The world we live in today means we often go in a lot of different directions and then want to look at how do we understand our trajectory, where we're going and why, and how to explain that to others. Because I see this happening so often, I really enjoy talking about how people can connect the dots, and they really seem to resonate to that theme.
Anna, thank you for that. I just love that term, connecting the dots. And when we were both undergraduates at Yale, I wish I could have had the kind of foresight that I have now with hindsight to connect it. I would have been settled for a few dots, you know. And so it reminded me of tic-tac-toe. We used to play these games that if you knew what was behind door number 4, I would say, I'm not playing that game, The Price is Right. I would have picked another selection. Or I would have taken door number 2 because I know that although when they first flip the door, it looks like it's a goat. But once they move the panel, they go, oh, a new car, a boat, your dream vacation. And so that is the what do they call it on the Price is Right? The showcase. That is the showcase. So here's the thing. Could you tell our audience, based on what you know and what you are putting together for your readers in your upcoming book, what kind of insight and foresight is required to connect the dots in real time in advance so that a person gets ahead of the curve?
Well, it's difficult to connect the dots in advance. It sort of has to come as you go. And to become aware of yourself and certain threads that you see that have occurred in your life and continue to formulate themselves. So you want to get to know yourself first. So as an example, I was a kid who took Latin all through high school because I loved trying to read a passage from the Aeneid and say, how would you say this in English? Then I majored in college in literature, and I was reading in Italian and French. And then my first job out of college was to raise money for Yale, my university, and there this issue of translating, which I saw going on, I hadn't really assessed that then, but I do now. And I saw that as a fundraiser, you have to be a translator. You have to show your potential donors why they'd want to support this worthy project. You have to translate for them what the project means. And then after I went to business school, I worked in marketing, and I saw that while marketing was not the profession I stayed in, it too is that process of translating. What are the benefits of your product that potential customers would want to have? When I finally had worked in that world for a little while and got interested more and more in psychology and went back to school to study that, I realized that now as I work with my clients and students and readers, I'm helping them to translate. I'm helping them understand what that world is out there, so I help translate in that regard, and help the world out there understand who they are. So another issue of translation. I'm a translator. I always say that's my role, and that's where you want to seek your own theme. Don't get bogged down in, what are your titles, your positions, the organizations you've worked with, but what are the things you do? Are you the person who builds relationships? Are you the person who figures out complex problems? That can have a relation to all kinds of things you've done, whether it's your professional work, volunteer work, experience with your family. But you want to start tracking what is that theme, and you first do that by trying to understand yourself. If you can understand your theme, then eventually you can work out getting that across to others.
That's so beautiful, Anna. Thank you. And I especially enjoy your talking about being a translator, because so many times it's a challenge to get a word to describe a concept. Mm-hmm. Now, in speaking of this connecting the dots and this, hindsight issue, I'd love the idea of 20/20 foresight, but that doesn't always happen. What are the potential consequences for us and others when we don't connect the dots and only recognize after the fact that, wrong turn?
Yes. So this is, we live in this world that's different from the one I grew up in. Back in those days, the expectation was you'd finish school at whatever level, you would take a job, you'd work for 40 years, and then you'd retire. Now we have a new pattern. People may be working in an industry that won't exist in 10 years, or they may end up in 10 years working in an industry that doesn't exist now. We have people who are living longer and working longer, and so they may have different aspects to their career over time. They may be taking time out to raise children or to do other things. And so it really is important to be able to tell people what it is you bring to the party when you're looking at taking your next job or moving into a role of leadership if you haven't been a manager yet, or getting funding for a project you'd like to do or a business you'd like to start. So everybody these days has to sort of advocate for themselves. We talk about everybody being a free agent. We can't necessarily count on taking a job and being with that organization until we retire. And it's also important to look at what you can do versus what you choose to do. We all gain all kinds of experience, and some of it is valuable for knowing what we don't want to do. That's important too. As an example, my friend Camilla Olson is someone who was trained in biology at a very high level, who moved into working in the biotech world, was very successful, in fact became a venture capitalist in that world and started several companies of her own. And then decided that what she really wanted to do at that point was to become a fashion designer, that she had that creativity there. She went back to school, got an MFA in fashion design, was very successful in that world, and has gone on to try to share what she knows with others. On her website called Savitude, and I like that name because it brings together for women the idea of being savvy and having some attitude, which is good. So Camilla, with her ability to make a business start, to be creative, to help other women move forward in their careers, because part of their story is, if you want to be successful in business, you want to be wearing the appropriate clothes that show that you are that successful person, and Camilla helps them to do that. So I think that it's important now, as work becomes more complex, as we go in very different directions at different times in our careers and our lives, we have to be the ones to pull that story together so others understand what we bring to the table.
Very true. As I was listening to you, Anna, what came to mind was the book by Dick Bowles, Richard Bowles. He wrote What Color is Your Parachute, but he also wrote a book, The Three Boxes of Life, referring to work, education, and play. And I think that is a big difference in this current time than it was a generation ago. You know, the time that we spent in education, play, and work, as you said, it's very complex today. It's not linear, and there's so many choices before us. And I'm sure this has so much to do with how you and Joe came up with these topics and this book. How is your new book, the upcoming book, Connect the Dots, different than How Can I Help? And what will be different and what will be the same?
Well, what we'll be doing there is primarily talking about careers for people who are starting a career, moving on in a career, or moving back to a career from having worked in the nonprofit world, for example. And so the topic is a bit different, but it does also, like How Can I Help, reflect on taking care of yourself, understanding yourself, and taking that with you in what you choose to do. The other thing that we hope will be similar in terms of the two books is that we like to be to the point with the information we're conveying. We don't want people having to slog through a very long book and lots of detail, but to give them some very succinct examples of what we're talking about so they can take it in and say, yep, I can do that. We also tend to include some humor in our work, and often by telling a tale on ourselves, and so that will be in the book too, and help people see that we know that not everybody gets things right the first time around.
Great, Anna. One of the themes running in your Connecting the Dots book is this inside-out approach to connecting the dots. Can you just tell our listeners briefly what that is and how that works?
Yes, I have this background as somebody who has been a psychotherapist and a career coach, and what I know is that for this process, it is very important to first know yourself and to know your current self. At different points in life, we have different objectives, we have different constraints that we have to take into account. So you want to look at who are you now, not who you were and what you wanted 5 years ago, or who you are and what you want 10 years from now, but who are you now? You have to get acquainted again with that current self. And you also have to look at where you have been to see those threads, to see those connections from prior experience and current desires. You want to be looking at where do you want to go. This is something that Camilla does with her website and her readers and people who use her product, which is to help them connect with the person they want to dress as, etc. So you want to get to know yourself first. The better you know yourself, the better ultimately you can express your strengths and experience and knowledge to others.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. Listeners, we'll be back in a moment with more from our featured guest today, Dr. Anna Ranieri, on Learn to Live Stress-Free.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright, Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our interview with our featured guest today, Dr. Anna Ranieri.
Anna, before the break, you were talking about Inside Out, how that concept works. What I was thinking about during the break was for a person who is facing a transition in their personal life, how does that aspect play out?
Yes, in your personal life as well as your professional life, self-awareness is really important. When you're going through a change in your life, you really have to understand who you are and where you choose to go next. And look at what are the elements that will help you in that transition. I always refer to the work of William Bridges, who wrote the book Transition, and reminded ourselves that as we make any change in life, change doesn't happen and get resolved overnight. We have to go through a process of making that transition work. An example of that in a personal life would be, suppose you're moving to another part of the country or another part of the world. Now you want to look at how do you gain some comfort with that process. First, you have to know yourself. What do you need to be happy in a new environment? Do you want to make sure that as you move into that new location, you get out there, you join a group that helps you meet other people? Is it that what's very important to you is being active physically? So you'll look at where can I find a gym or a hiking trail or a swimming pool? You want to be looking at what you need most in your personal life in order to be able to help that happen. They say that it takes a good while for anybody to adjust to a new environment, whether it's personal or professional. But you can help yourself to consider what are the elements that are essential to you as you make that transition.
Thank you so much, Anna. In writing this book and talking about this topic of connecting the dots, you've been able to design something lovely for yourself, combining your background in literary study, business, and psychology. How satisfying was this, process for you?
It's been very satisfying to me for a few reasons. One is that it gives me the opportunity to share with others some things I've learned along the way and that my clients have learned along the way. I really enjoy passing that on to others and seeing them respond to it. Another reason it's satisfying is that some people will say, wait a minute, what are you doing with a degree in literature and an MBA and a PhD in psychology? What's that all about? Can't you make up your mind?
I love it.
So, of course, the short answer is, no, I can't make up my mind. I have tried a bunch of things in my life, and what it's brought me around to is this combination of interests, of skills that come together as I write about issues that are of a psychological nature, but often occur in a business setting. And so it brings together that training I did. I always remind people that everything is grist for the mill, and you want to be the one to choose which of those skills you want to carry forward and in what way.
That is so beautiful, and I think that's helpful for many because there's some people, back in the day it was, you're a jack of all trades and master of none. And here you have completely flipped that around. One career has supported the next, has buoyed the next, so it's onward and upward. You're not watering anything down at all. You are connecting the dots to build this wonderful career and life for yourself and have a model for others.
Thank you.
Now, Anna, do you encounter people for whom, this concept of generativity is all about what they do at work and it's not carried over into other aspects of their life? And how important is it for people to consider all aspects of their lives?
Well, it's a good point. People have different ways of being generative or, creating something for the world, whether it is for their own family, for their community, for the nation or the planet. It also is how they go about it, whether it is experienced in their work life, in their family life, in their volunteer work, etc. I think there are different ways to contribute, and some people do it more in one way than another. You can imagine, having gone to the schools I did when I was learning, Yale and the Wharton School and Stanford, I've got some classmates who have really, really, moved to the head of things, and their way of contributing to the world has often been through the work that they do in all different kinds of careers. However, there are people that I know, their real mark has been left by the things that they do not in a work setting per se, but among family and friends, volunteering for their community and for all kinds of efforts in that regard. You want to know where you want to put your strengths to work, your talents, your interests, and that can, of course, vary over time. We know people are very active in a career, then they retire, and they take on a volunteer effort, and they make that work by using the skills they gained on the job, whether it's in managing people, moving ideas forward, building relationships, etc. They can take those skills and perhaps use them in a different way.
Well, Anna, as I was listening to your advice, one of the things that the light bulb over my head, if you could read the caption, it says, "Oh man, Anna's a triple Ivy League graduate." Right? I go. But here's the thing. I remember a few years ago, I picked up, I believe it was a Stanford alumni blog post where I don't know if it was an all-class reunion, and basically because of what has happened in Silicon Valley in terms of, some people have been wildly successful, including people who are dropped out of Stanford and other schools. And so at this reunion, you had all these people that from the outside, everybody in the world would say, oh, everybody here is a successful person. But, when I was thinking about what you just said, your Yale, Wharton, Stanford, so among that group, they were saying there were people who, like a separate group where they had a net worth for at least $50 million. And so that's a different cut. from, a person that's, they've just had a job and, they've done very well. But so I think it said the 50 million up and up club, and right, and so the visual they were showing in this blog post was, here you've got these people, and then they're the 1 or 2% of alumni who are really ultra successful. And so I mention that just because whenever I've been someplace and and hear people talk about, this person is smart, or this is the smartest person in the room, and I go, there's always somebody smarter than us, and there's always somebody that's more successful than us, and there's always somebody else that has more money or higher net worth. And so I think that kind of perspective, because the reason I bring that up is because sometimes I hear people lamenting they didn't go to this school, or they didn't do this, or they didn't do that, and they often don't realize that even within those other tiers, there are tiers within tiers within tiers. So I thought that the Stanford article was really good, because here are all these very accomplished people, and some of the people were reporting feeling less than because they didn't have a net worth of $50 million.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so, we want to look at what are our goals rather than other people's goals for us. And I think it's critical, again, that, we know ourselves first, and what it is we know we can do and what it is we choose to do at different periods of life, so that we can then tell that story to others. If our objective is to get a particular job, we can with confidence say, I can do this job, and here's why, even if I haven't set foot into a corporate office for a long time. But you want to have that sense of going where you want to go. Your objective may not be to earn, millions and millions of dollars. It may be to enjoy an activity that's important to you, and you may find that activity through your work, your volunteer work, your engagement with your own family.
Great, Anna. Thank you for that. And I just as a point of clarification, I want to just say why I mentioned that is because sometimes, people will look from the outside, and we see this. I know you see this as a therapist. All the recent studies show when the people that spend the most time on Facebook, for example, I'm not just singling Facebook out, but that there's a tendency, those people that are spending 8 to 10 hours on Facebook per day, let's say, they have a higher risk factor for being depressed in terms of looking at how the lives of others, seem so fabulous. And so, this is an aspect of our society now that, because for a long time I've been trying to figure out this thing with the selfies and why I would need a phone that has a camera on both sides, because I still can remember when we had pay phones. So I know I'm really dating myself, but my point is I think the distinction that you make about how to wisely use your time and energy rather than just falling into something is very important.
Yes, I think so. And, when we look at, making that decision about how we want to spend our time and energy at whatever point in life, what we're doing there is kind of exercising an important thing there, which is that sense of control. Okay, I'm going to take control to the extent possible in where I want my career or my life to go. And that's a standard human need, especially if you've been through a rough patch. Perhaps you haven't been working for a while, or you've had a change in your personal life or your health, and you want to look at taking things to the next step and controlling what you can control. As we all know, there are things you can't control. I think it also means that we use that self-awareness as our weapon of understanding in that sense, so that when inevitably at the neighborhood barbecue somebody says, well, don't you want to make $1 million? You can say, actually, here is what I want to do, And when you do find that path that you want and you can explain it, when we're talking about connecting the dots, we're saying, okay, that means, for example, as you're looking at perhaps your next job, you're going to use your ability to connect the dots to tell that story to the hiring manager, so that through your cover letter, through your resume, through the content of your interview for that job, you're showing them what it is you can bring to that that organization, that position, and then you're going to enjoy the satisfaction when you get the job of it being a good fit, not one that you take because of the money or because of the prestige, but something that really is the right fit for you.
Great, Anna. Thank you. And I know our listeners have enjoyed listening to your wise advice. Thank you for being our featured guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Anna. I really enjoyed it, and I just want to say those themes that you speak about of knowing yourself and, you know, what you and your co-author Joe talked about in your first book, How You Can and Can't Help, I think are great ways that we can connect the dots. Anna, would you share with our audience how they can learn more about you and what you're doing and how they might get in touch with you?
Okay. They can read a bit about me and my work on my website, AnnaRanieri.com. That's AnnaRanieri.com. They can email me at AnnaRanieri@gmail.com. They can find some of my articles on this topic if they just look at Anna Ranieri, HBR. They'll see these articles for Harvard Business Review that I've written during the last year or so. And I would be happy to hear from people that way.
Okay, fantastic. So listeners, if you want to take a look at more of who Anna is and what she does, check her website, AnnaRanieri.com. Email her at AnnaRanieri, AnnaRanieri@gmail.com, and check out her articles at Anna Ranieri HBR, and you'll see her Harvard Business Review articles. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you very much.
Anna, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
I would remind people to first know yourself and enjoy constructing your story. And then, and this is another theme of Camilla Olson, when she and I have done some work on how a fashion designer and a psychologist can work together to urge people to take that next step. We've talked about first knowing yourself and then showing yourself. Here's who I am, whether it's what I say, what I wear, what I do, what I value. I'm comfortable in my own professional or personal role.
Wonderful, Anna. Thank you for being our featured guest today. And audience, I want to thank you for listening. So audience, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this show and whatever time zone you're in, we certainly appreciate your presence and we trust that you'll benefit in some way from the information that we delivered during today's podcast show. We welcome and look forward to receiving your comments about our show. Please let us know if there are additional topics you'd like to see us cover or a guest you enjoyed so much that you'd like us to invite them back. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how to get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you'll receive a free gift from us. Call or email us today to schedule your appointment. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of www.stressfreenow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.